Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It has been a long time. Where have we been? I don't know. I don't even remember the name of this show anymore. I guess it's been a long time, but just kidding. We are Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles video cast, and we're so happy to be back, and we're happy that you are back, and we thank you, and we'll give you more thanks later on in the show because the fest for Beatles fans is over with, and that's the last time you saw us. And unfortunately, we had a lot going in our lives, so we had to move this show a little later than what we wanted to. But here we are. We're back. I'm Tom Hunyadi, one of your four co-hosts. You may know me from my other show, Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast. And today we're just talking about an album that's celebrating its 50th anniversary, right? Red Rose Speedway.
Yep.
This started a 5-album run that all went to number one, right? And including a 3-record live LP, all goes to number one. And we'll talk about that a little later. However, let me introduce you to my other 3 co-hosts, and this is the highlight of my Mondays when we do this show, because I get to hang out with these 3 incredible people. And first of all, she brought the roses. She's ready. She's in the mood, right? She's got the red lipstick on, because not only is she the queen of backdrop, she's also the queen the red lipstick. She's also the queen of all Beatles media. She's got wonderful books out there, Songs We Were Singing, The Guide Towards the Beatles' Lesser Known Tracks. We've got Fandom in the Beatles. We've got Michael Jackson FAQ. She's all over the place. If you listen to a podcast, there's a good chance you're going to hear her on it, because everybody loves to have her on their podcast. And it's the one and only Queen, Kit O'Toole. Kits, how are you?
Well, doing much better after a bout with COVID. I'm back and better than ever. So, hi everybody. I'm so glad to see everybody and glad to be back.
Yeah, great.
Glad to have you back.
You're also, yeah. We're also joined by our YouTube extraordinaire. He is just have this wonderful YouTube channel called Mean Mr. Mayo, where he does rants. He just did one earlier today. He just put on a rant about a sandwich, and I tell you, I had a good laugh about that.
But I do more than
I know. Oh yes, you
more
do.
than that,
yes, you do. Yes, you do. And then he just went to show. He had the latest video up for a convention that he went to, where he got a bunch of autographs and a Beatle content. I mean, record store content, anything you want. Beatle reviews. It's just a wonderful YouTube channel filled with many different videos. That if you don't like the Beatles, he'll do something else. I mean, he's great. And it's me, Mr. Mayo. Joe, my friend, always good to see you. What's going on?
Hey, Tom. And by the way, the sandwich rant was not about a club sandwich.
Good.
Oh.
No. But doing good, and really looking forward to digging into this album with you.
Okay. Well, we talked about this album. People have opinions about this album, and I can't wait to see all your opinions about this album. But hold those opinions, because first we still got to introduce one more person here, and this man has he's been on the scene for 40 years, whether it's on the radio or if it's on podcasts. The guy's all over the place. And again, another man, if you like podcasts, there's a good chance you're going to hear him on one, because people love to have him on their podcast as well. Yeah, he's the co-host of Things We Said Today, a podcast that's been going for almost 11 years now. Now it's him, it's Darren DeVivo and Alan Kozin. He's got his Every Little Thing syndicated radio show, which does that, plays every stinking little thing, well, except for the probably not the stuff from John and Yoko, right? Probably not like that.
Wedding album.
But
I wouldn't play that
you
either.
Never know.
No.
If the show was a little longer, I would do that.
Yes, you give the guy 3 hours, and I'm sure he would play all 3 back to back to back, right?
Electronic sound too.
Oh, electric sound. There you go. Ken Michaels, it's great to have you here. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm always looking forward to talking about specific solo albums from the Beatles. So this is one we haven't tackled yet. So looking forward to it.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, very true. And we're going to tackle that soon. As they said, it's Red Rose Speedway. We're here to talk about that today. But first, Ken, what can we learn? What's been going on this last month? books, movie news, or news? What's going on? Because I need to know.
Quite a lot.
Tom Petty song.
I need to know.
We're going to start with some upsetting news. Don't know how many of you are aware of this. This comes from Rogue Best, who is Pete Best's brother. And he says that there was an event planned in Liverpool called An Evening with Frida Kelly at the David Lewis Theater. This was the first Beatles fan club. They had a get-together there in 1962 in Liverpool. And Frida had to have surgery done. So they asked Tony Bramwell to fill in for her. So Tony took a train ride to Liverpool, but he collapsed on the train. There are unconfirmed reports that he had a stroke. He was taken to the hospital. Then they called on Frida again, and she showed up for the event in crutches.
Wow.
Rogue called her a trooper. Yep. And on Tony's Facebook page, he wrote today that he's had 3 days in bed and every test in every orifice known. He says, seems I'm indestructible. So we're sending prayers to Tony for a full recovery. All right.
Absolutely.
As we hear more about his condition, we'll let you know here on this show. The big news regarding the Fest for Beatle fans is that it was announced that next year they'll be celebrating both the 50th anniversary of the Fest, when it was known as Beatle Fest, and the 60th anniversary of the Beatles' arrival in America by having it take place at the new mod TWA Hotel at JFK in New York City, February 9th, 10th, and 11th. Of course, the 9th is the anniversary when the Beatles did their first show on the Ed Sullivan Show. So very cool idea to hold it there. And who knows if it'll continue there every year. Everything's up in the air right now, and hopefully we'll get more information about that.
Is the actual, Ken, 1 second, is the actual spot where all the fans were screaming and yelling, I mean, is that still a thing that we could all go to, take pictures and stuff like that when the Beatles arrived, where all the fans were? I mean, is that?
I don't know if they've actually pointed to that area, like, here you could take your photo. I don't know if there's anything like that there. I doubt it there is.
Okay.
But it's just a really cool idea to think to do it there.
Right.
Also, Google announced that any day now, the Beatles recording of Here Comes the Sun is about to surpass 1 billion streams.
Wow.
That is the most streamed song in the Beatles group catalog. Really amazing. Probably the most important news on the Beatles historically, speaking in the past month, is that a tape of a Beatles concert from April 4th, 1963, when they played at the Stowe Boarding School, a private boarding school for boys that was in Buckinghamshire, has come to light. The concert, nearly an hour long, was recorded on reel-to-reel on a 1/4-inch tape by then 15-year-old John Bloomfield. The Beatles were booked to play there by David Moore, a pupil who wrote to Beatles manager Brian Epstein asking if the group could play there. Epstein must have noticed the connection to a very important Liverpool family, the Moores family, who owned the Liverpool football pools and retail business. And the Beatles okayed playing there for a fee of £100, and Moores raised the money by selling tickets to his schoolmates. According to a BBC radio special for their show Front Row, despite the loud cheers and some screaming, the tape is not drowned out by audience reaction. The concert features songs from their debut album, Please Please Me, which actually came out just 2 weeks before this performance. The group kicked off the show with I Saw Her Standing There, going into Chuck Berry's Too Much Monkey Business, and the host of the BBC show, Samira Ahmed, and Mark Lewison are supposed to be the only people who have heard it after Bloomfield played it for the first time since the recording was made. This show, called Front Row, the BBC program, played a few seconds each of I Saw Her Standing There, Too Much Monkey Business, and Please Please Me. Regarding the significance of this tape, Lewison said, the opportunity that this tape presents, which is completely out of the blue, is fantastic because we hear them just on the cusp of the breakthrough into complete world fame. And at that point, all audience recordings become blanketed in screams. For this show, the Beatles are heard taking requests from the schoolboys, who shouted out the names of the songs that had only been out for 2 weeks. All these years, Bloomfield kept this recording, but never made it public until now. I've heard those few seconds, and it's hard to hear the lead vocals.
Yeah.
But who knows with today's technology if anything can be done with it. And then
Peter
the
Jackson,
apples are-
right?
yeah, well,
That's right.
They
Calling
can do
Peter
that.
Jackson.
That's the next album.
Yep.
but you got to get Apple's approval for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, in book news, I wasn't aware of this release until our friend Tom Brennan alerted me to this. But back on February 18th, a book came out called Repackaging the Beatles by Terry Wilson. It takes a look at all the different releases from 1966 on, in which the Beatles music has been repackaged, from compilations to streaming to remixes and archival box sets, including super deluxe editions. And you can read about every one of them in this book. It's fully documented with track listings and release dates. It's described as the definitive guide to the compilations, collections, and remixes, which continue to flow out all these years, impressing every new and old generation of Beatle fans. Cool idea for a book right there.
Yeah.
Yahoo reports that Elliot Mintz, longtime insider with John and Yoko, will release a memoir next year that will weave in behind-the-scenes moments with the famous couple. The US publisher Dutton and British publisher Transworld announced the deal with Mintz, who first met John and Yoko in the early 1970s and remained close to Yoko after John's murder in 1980. The book is currently untitled, and Elliot is quoted as saying, "I have waited 50 years to share my experiences with Yoko and John."
Nice. That
This
should
is-
balance things out a bit, this book.
Yeah.
He says, "This is the opportunity of a lifetime. It is a privilege to share my odyssey and include the reader in intimate portrayal of my two dearest friends." All right. Thanks to our good friend John Bazzini, we learned that Legs Larry Smith, who played drums as a member of the Bonzo Dog Band, has just released a new song that's a tribute to George Harrison. It's called "Oh Keoki." Spell that Keoki. Keoki is George's name in Hawaiian. This can be found on Larry's new album called Mr. Wonderful. You'll recall that George wrote a song for Larry called His Name is Legs, Ladies and Gentlemen, which you can find on his Extra Texture album from 1975. A song that Tom was constantly requesting on my radio show, Every Little Thing. Always wanted to hear His Name is Legs. Tom there. This will make many of us feel old. April 8th marked the birthday of the first Beatles child, Julian, who turned 60. Julian celebrated with a dinner in Paris, and joining him to celebrate was brother Sean. Julian thanked his record label BMG for hosting this lovely birdie dinner, that's what he called it, and Julian shared photos on social media with him and his guests seated at a dinner table. And speaking of Julian, he has just recorded a new version of his environmentally conscious song Saltwater that has just been released by the nonprofit label Future Youth Records. Playing on the record, former Wings guitarist Lawrence Juber, drummer Jim Keltner, and on keyboards, Porcaro. Lost the name here. One of the Porcaro brothers. Okay, that is brand new. And Steve Porcaro. This is to raise money for the youth-led Think Earth Music campaign to raise critical funds for environmental justice for Earth Day, which was on April the 22nd. John Lennon's iconic song Imagine has just been added to the National Recording Registry of the Library of Congress. On April 12th, Librarian of Congress Carla Hayden named 25 recordings as audio treasures worthy of preservation for all time based on their cultural, historical, or aesthetic importance in the nation's recorded sound heritage, with Imagine being one of them. Mary Hopkin has a brand new album coming out on May the 3rd, and she has teamed up with her daughter, Jessica Lee Morgan. It's called Two Hearts, brand new from Mary Hopkin. Some concert information: Billy J. Kramer will be appearing this Sunday at the Landmark Theater in Port Washington, Long Island for a concert at 3 p.m. Our good friend Gary Burr, who we know from being in the Roundheads with Ringo, doing a concert with his wife, who's also a really good songwriter, Georgia Middleman. And that's at the Cutting Room in New York City for May 19th. Speaking of May 19th, that's when Ringo and the All-Stars get back on the road again. And they're doing a West Coast tour, which runs through June the 17th, 22 dates in all. And he'll be appearing in California, Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, and Utah. Okay. And that's not too long from now. Ringo.
And I love that Ringo's going back. I mean, he had COVID twice, I think, and he got well, and he just keeps going. I love it.
Yep.
He's tough.
He sure is.
He's like an O'Toole.
That's right. COVID can't bring us down.
Takes after you, Kit.
That's right.
Well done, Kit. I mean, Ken. Well done. Well done.
That's all I got
Names
for
are
you.
close.
All right.
Well, great job. Thank you, Ken. And here we go. Red Rose Speedway. And to celebrate, we're going to talk about it a little bit. But first, I'm just going to give a little background here of the album. The sessions began in March of '72 after the university tour. The sessions continued until June. Then they took a break, and then they went out on tour for Wings Over Europe. That went from July to August. Sessions resumed for Red Rose Speedway in September until December. Then in January and February is overdubbing and mixing. As we know, this album was proposed as a double album. We'll talk about that as well today. But it was brought down to a single album. As I said, the album went to number one. Which started a string of 5 albums, a number one streak of 5 albums. And then, as we know, the lead-off single, My Love, was also a big hit. And I want to know, Ken, do you recall this album coming out at first? Do you remember hearing My Love? I would imagine My Love was all over the radio at that time, whether it was just AM or both AM and FM. Give us your experience of hearing just hearing the album for the first time, not really necessarily giving us, your thoughts on every track, but just, hearing for the first time.
No, I definitely remember hearing My Love all the time being played on AM radio and Top 40 radio in New York City. I used to listen to WABC, which was the biggest Top 40 station in the country. They played it all the time. And I don't quite remember about FM, but I do remember because I used to listen to WPLJ in New York City, which was a rock station at the time. And I do recall hearing Get on the Right Thing being played on that radio station, and possibly Big Barn Bed.
Okay.
But yeah, I remember getting the album fairly close to when it was released and really liking it. Of course, all this history that you just talked about, what happened in 1972, we didn't know anything about that. It was just a new album at the time. We didn't know anything about possibly being a double album. This was just the new album, the new single album from Paul and Wings. And I enjoyed it for what it was. Initially, I always liked the album a lot. These days, I love it even more. But I always enjoyed the album from the very beginning.
Okay, very good. Joe, you I think you've talked about in the past, the earlier 70s albums you got towards the mid to later 70s, right?
Right. I didn't start buying the albums when they were brand new, the solo albums, aside from Shaved Fish when it was new and Blast from Your Past. The regular studio albums, I don't remember doing it before the Bad Boy album, the 78 and, London Town. So I don't have a memory of when it first came out at all. But I do remember hearing it, like Ken said, on WABC. I was in the same area, AM radio. Yeah, that was in my childhood. That's a biggie, with so many other songs that I actually remember hearing, among them, Uncle Albert and My Sweet Lord, It Don't Come Easy. I remember those as childhood favorites. Photograph, Oh My My,
Right.
Mind games. Yeah,
Hmm.
but I don't have any memory. I didn't get the album. The album was one of those again. And lately we've been talking about albums just by coincidence that happen to be albums like this, where I use them kind of to fill in later. So I probably didn't hear the whole album of Red Rose Speedway till around, I'm guessing like 77-ish or something like that. 76, 77, something around there. Yeah.
All right, probably during the All the Best. I'm sorry, not All the Best. Wings Greatest era. Maybe.
Yeah, around there, and we'll talk more about it later. But since Ken was talking about his first impression, but my first impression, I love My Love to death. I think it's a classic McCartney song. The rest of the album, it did not impress me on first listen, and I'll go into that. But yeah, didn't impress me on first listen as a whole. No.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Kit, like you, like me, kids of the '80s, getting into them in the '80s. I'm sure you were probably familiar with the track "My Love,"
Yeah.
with either Wings Greatest or All the Best, or even being played on the radio. But talk about when you were first aware of the Red Rose Speedway album.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I absolutely was aware of My Love from, because it was still being played on, probably the sort of the soft rock kind of radio too, and all. And I was trying to, as you've all been talking, I was trying to remember like when exactly I picked it up, because it was sort of like what you were saying, Joe, is I was sort of filling in, as I was like really starting to get into Paul solo stuff. And so I was like, oh, this is the album that My Love came from. Okay, Red Rose Speedway. I got to pick this up because I got to fill out my Wings collection here. So I'm guessing it had to have been like late 80s, early 90s, something like that I probably picked it up. And I have to admit, I'm kind of in Joe's camp in this one, that when I first heard it, obviously still loved My Love, but the rest of it didn't really grab me at first. I thought it was kind of uneven, and it was, it didn't grab me immediately like Band on the Run did. I mean, that was an album that I instantly loved.
Right.
And so this one, we'll talk about it later, of course, in depth. But my initial impression was that I remember thinking, this is not going to be one of my top favorites. I mean, it had like one or two highlights for me. I think Get on the Right Thing was another one that I gravitated toward immediately. But other than that, kind of an uneven one for me.
Okay. Cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, and here, filling in the gaps.
Mhm.
Come the late '80s, early '90s. I'm working. I got my own money now, so I'm constantly going to the stores and getting them either on cassette, CD, or album. It didn't matter.
Yep. Right.
Either way, I could find a copy. That's all that mattered to me. But yeah, I mean, it was just, for me, it was always the album with My Love on it. I would listen to it from time to time. It wasn't one that I never played, a lot. But I didn't go back to it a lot, but I still, I thought, the vocals were great. I thought the band was really good. The instrumentation was really good on the album. But as we'll get into, when we talk about tracks on here, but yeah, I think it was fine at that point in time. Later on, as we learned more things, throughout the years, maybe that kind of changed your perspective on the album. But we'll get into that as well. But let's start off with we got to talk about My Love, because here it is. It's the lead single. Really the only single, unfortunately, but it's number one at the same time, I think, with the album, which is a rare feat. Not a lot of times you'll see the number one album and a number one song from one artist at the same time. George was just able to do it a couple months later, months or weeks actually, but an amazing feat, I should say, Kid, talk about My Love for a second. You know, sometimes it gets some flack, right? I mean, when you talk about, you know, ballads, is it as strong as Maybe I'm Amazed? Is it as strong as other ballads in his catalog? What are your thoughts on the track?
I have always been in the pro My Love camp. I think it is one of his finest singles, one of his finest songs, period. His voice is just beautiful on this. I mean, it's just him in his prime, I think. No, it is not, you know, I know Maybe I'm Amazed when he gets that, you know, that scratchy raw kind of raw vocalness. No, this isn't like that. You know, but it's still you know, it's got that kind of smoothness to it. And it's, I think it's just as effective. And all right, I know some people out there are going to say, because I was about to say, I love the lyrics. Okay, I know grammatically terrible. Some people say My Love does it good. All right, fine. Maybe not the best grammatically, but it works. It works for the song. And yes, the
Could be anything.
woes. Yeah, exactly.
Hugging and kissing and cuddling could be anything.
Yeah, I mean, it can be your interpretation, right? That's
Right.
exactly. And the woes, I mean, it doesn't bother me. It's you know, it sticks in your head. I
Yeah.
mean, that's it. It doesn't. I mean, you don't forget it, do you?
No.
And it doesn't strike me. I mean, there have been other times, you know, and I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point, where, you know, I've been annoyed by sometimes when he does that or hums, where, you know, we'll hum along where I'll think, okay, that's a little bit lazy. He could have put a lyric in there. This is not one of those times. I don't think. I think it works. And I mean, that guitar solo, come on. I mean, that is one of the best guitar solos, in my opinion, in a pop record. I mean, it's, you remember it. It is so effective. I just think it's one of the best pop rock records, you know, of all time. I absolutely, it's one of those songs I never get tired of hearing. So I see why it went to #1. It never gets old for me. It's timeless. So
Great.
My Love.
Oh,
My Love.
Ken, let's continue with you. You know, again, you know, as a radio, as a DJ, what I mean, obviously ballads are big business, right? This was just has hit written all over it, don't you think? At that time?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's more than just a ballad. I mean, McCartney is a master at great hooks. And you know, he's one of the greatest. Some people will say he is the greatest melodic songwriter of all time, and this is one primary example of it. His vocals are absolutely perfect. The arrangement, like you said, Kit, Henry McCullough's solo is just absolutely what the song needed. You can understand why Paul would tell him play it that way every time, because it was just so right for the song. It's a really smooth production, and you know, it's just, once you study all of Paul's catalog, and if you're just talking about the solo catalog, there may be other ballads and love songs from him that I like more than My Love, but at the time, as a single, yeah, it deserved to hit #1. You know, there's a lot of songs that we'll say should have been to #1 here on the show that didn't, but a lot of it has to do with the fact of when it came out, what the competition was. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me that this song was #1 for 4 weeks in the United States.
Very good. Joe, what do you got to say?
Oh, well, like I said earlier, kind of, I love the song, a big hit. I think it, for me, I'm giving it a little away for later, but I think it's the really only fleshed out and well-developed song on the entire album. I think it's easily the standout. I think it deserves to be a #1 hit. I think the reason the album was #1 is solely of that song. I think if the song wasn't on, I don't think it would have made #1. But back to the song, you know, Kit kind of said she doesn't mind the whoa. You know, there's instances where I'm gonna knock Paul for some of that, but not in this one. I don't know. It just fits so well in this song. It suits the song so well, and it's not just a matter. Yeah, and it doesn't just seem lazy to me when he does it in this. You know, it's funny because I've said many times on many shows. Sometimes we can contradict ourselves. You say, well, I don't like this song because it sounds like a kiddie song, but another song I like it precisely because it's a good kid song. It makes sense. But why those things change, I have no idea. You can get on Paul for his sugar stuff, which I'm going to do later. But I say for this, hey, nobody does it good as he does. When it comes to this is like really putting all that stuff that Paul excels at so well into a great piece of work, a great single. It's not just a lazy throwaway. It's not an unfinished demo or some sounding thing. This is a real good piece of work. The strings, I think, really accentuated. And we mentioned, of course, Henry McCulloch's wonderful guitar. That is the highlight, I would even say, of the piece. I love that he got a chance to shine on that. I kind of feel sometimes sorry for Henry. I think he kind of felt this way. Some of the other stuff he participated in might not have been what he would want to do necessarily, But yeah, I think I pretty much covered it. Paul sounds great on it. He sings great on it. Yeah, and I love the double entendre. As a kid, of course, I never thought anything. I still don't think anything of the lyric. You just can make it anything, as I said earlier, right? It could be. She could do anything good. It doesn't have to mean it's not a proper lyric. It doesn't have to be that, but just generally loves me and makes me feel good and stuff.
Right. I agree. I mean, the orchestration on here is a highlight for me as well. It's very beautiful. And what can you say about the guitar solo? I mean, that's just one of the great rock, ballad guitar solos of history, really, if you think about it. And if you've got a chance to listen to the live version and the transformation that this song took, because people don't realize, I mean, they started playing this in 71 during the 72 during the 72 university tour, and then again in later, and when they took the break from recording the album, so people, I mean, if you're following Paul and in the UK and then again over Europe, you're hearing these songs because he's playing a lot of songs that are brand new to people. And I miss that. I mean, I wish he could, artists, some artists still do that, but unfortunately Paul doesn't do that anymore. But to hear the song and then kind of like the call and response, because when he would say "My Love" and then you would hear Linda say "My Love" as well, which is really interesting. And it's a shame that, I don't know if it's a shame or if it was a good thing that they dropped that part in the finished product. But it's nonetheless, it's very interesting. And to hear, Henry do different solos with that on different, during live shows as well, is very interesting. And what he was able to bring to the table and say, hey, let me, I'm so happy he fought for wanting to do what he did. I mean, that's such a great thing. And you got to give, Paul some credit for letting him do it, because this man knows what he wants. As the note usually gets his way. But it's a fantastic track. Let's switch it over. Let's flip the 45 over, because here's a track that, again, you talk about a B-side, a non-album B-side, and the excitement of that, and the mess. Ken, I mean, we don't know anything about this song, right? I mean, we know that it's live, of course, but here in the States, we don't know what the hell this is. I mean, and audiences were getting to hear this during the the Wings Over the university tour as well, and the Wings Over Europe. So I mean, what are your thoughts on the mess?
I loved it. That's part of the fun in being a fan of the Beatles, even going back to the group years, that they put out a lot of non-LP B-sides. And when you're buying the album and there's a B-side that's not on the album, that's something that's special. And sometimes, you end up playing that a lot because you don't want to, neglect that song. And I love the mess a lot because it rocks. You could say maybe Red Rose Speedway doesn't rock enough. So, Paul has a habit, as we've said on this show, you say it on two legs. Some of his most interesting songs are songs that he releases as B-sides or bonus tracks on CD singles. And, you've gone to lengths, Tom, on your show of what songs would you swap, kind of a thing. What would you take out of the album? What would you put on there to replace it? What B-sides or extra material at the time? But I loved it.
That time. But go ahead.
It's not easy. It's not easy, but yeah, I loved it. I thought, all the different sections of the song made it interesting. It just sounds like, and you read about how they created the song as soon as Henry joined the band.
Right.
And it sounds very loose, and yet at the same time, a lot of what's constructed in the song makes sense. So much of Paul's music, and I've said this many times, is there's a lot of different sections of songs that he strings together, and somehow it all flows. And that's the most important thing, that it all works together. Some people put that down about Paul, that a lot of songs are unfinished and he strings these things together and that's how he gets by on them. But the only thing that matters is the end result. And if the end result works, and John did the same thing too.
Right. Yeah. And Mark brings up a good
Happiness
point.
is a Warm Gun was that.
Oh, that's a Beatles classic. This is not in my book.
But I'm just saying, as an example, there's like 4 songs in Happiness is a Warm Gun. So, I mean, John cut down Paul a little bit with the Abbey Road medley, saying, well, it's unfinished songs that were put together, but it all worked. That's all that matters.
Well, I agree. It certainly worked in that case. Can't argue with you.
Mark brings up a good point that some people, that their first exposure to the mess may have been on the James Paul McCartney special.
Yeah, I don't remember that now, that version of it.
Yeah. However, I don't know, Paul, if it was on the US one, because I know that the UK had different songs during that live performance at the end than the US one did. I'd have to go back and double check which ones were swapped.
There's like 2 songs that were there was a difference.
Right. Joe, you're big familiar with the mess. Was that something that you would go to or not?
No, I think I never was a big fan of the mess, although I don't hate it or anything. It's just not a big favorite. But I thought it was a really nice fit as the B-side, though. You like something a little kind of different and offbeat, and you flip it over like that, and it does rock. I like to have it because it rocks. And if it had been on the album, if they, the double album, I think that would have gave a little more edge to the Red Rose Speedway. So yeah, not a big fan, but it's okay for a rocker.
Okay, Kit.
I love the mess. I may have heard it for the first time, like years ago at the fest. When I think it was the first time I saw the James Paul McCartney special, when they showed it in one of the video rooms, when they used to have 2 video rooms going, and pre-YouTube, and that was, I think, maybe even I didn't even know of the existence of that special. And when they had the live, the other version of the mess on that show, I just was flipping out over it. I mean, I just loved it. The energy and it was such a great rocker. I think I wish this had been made the final cut on the album. I'll even go that far. I think if we do have time to talk about songs that could be swapped out, I would have swapped this one in. I've always been a big fan of the mess.
Very cool. I hope this isn't true. Jack Hill just mentioned the rest in peace Gordon Lightfoot. I
just Googled it. Unfortunately, it is true.
Oh, no.
Yeah, very sorry to hear that.
And Mark says, what is it that classic pop and rock artists pass away on the same day as Talk More Talk?
I know. Jeez. Yeah.
He was just here too, 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I really wanted to go see him live, but I had friends and family in town. But he canceled the show. He canceled the show. So his saying was sick here in Arizona. So, and that the dates were supposed to be rescheduled later in the year.
Very sad.
Yes.
I was a big fan.
I loved a lot of his music.
Yeah.
If you could read my mind is such a classic.
It's a classic.
Yeah, it was like a
yeah,
like a
it's
part of my childhood. Whenever I
Yeah.
hear a song, like yeah, I think of like my childhood. So
Mm.
sorry, really sorry to
Yeah.
hear.
But yeah, I think the mess is a early classic rocker from Paul and the band, Paul and Wings, and I really love Henry's what he contributed to that song, and it's really cool. And yeah, I mean, I really wish that, you know, at that time, I'm sure it can. I mean, you were like, I mean, it's like, well, where is he doing this live? You know, I mean,
Mhm.
you know, why is he doing it here in the States?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I brought this up a number of times, but having seen Wings in 1976, my big shocker was Soily.
Really,
Where
right,
the hell did that song come from? We didn't know. I didn't know anything about Soily.
right,
So what a cool thing that is. But it's very unusual to end your concert with that,
right. Yeah,
with
very
a song
true.
that most people wouldn't know. So
Ken, I know we know there wasn't a second single. We know that Live and Let Die. We know now Live and Let Die was recorded during, you know, these sessions for Red Rose Speedway. That was going to come out with the film, which, you know, was not too long after the release of My Love. Do you think they could have released a second single for this album? If what do you hear? Do you hear anything that would have been a good second single from this album?
probably the most commercial to me would have been Big Barn Bed.
Oh, really?
I think so. But you know
Okay.
something, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. You know, we talk a lot about the Beatles and how they always had that mindset of, you know, this is this standalone single and this is the album, and so many of their albums didn't have singles on them. And then as I'm reading Luca Parassi's book, it says in there, Paul didn't want any singles for Band on the Run.
Right.
You know, Helen Wheels was just going to be a single. So a lot of this releasing singles from albums was probably because of the persuasion of the American market,
Mm,
because that's how we sold albums here. That's the way you sell albums. You got to have hits on the albums. So, and Paul, you know, it's been written that Pete Bennett, who worked in promotions for Apple, had to persuade Paul to release My Love as a single. And in the McCartney Legacy book, they talk about how Paul was looking at the singles charts in the UK at the time, and there were a lot of glam rock singles that were making it. So he thought that My Love probably couldn't have been a big hit. He was only looking at the UK charts, not looking at the American charts. But it's very possible that Paul might have been thinking, you know, Red Rose Speedway is an album. Maybe it shouldn't have any singles.
mm,
The thought of there even being two singles was probably foreign to Paul at that point. Look at, you know, the McCartney album. There was no single from the first McCartney album. They could have easily released Maybe I'm Amazed.
Sure.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
So, you know, do I think there should have been a second single? Yes. But, you know, with Live and Let Die a few months away, there probably wasn't enough time to release a second single. But Big Barn Bed, I think, is a very catchy tune.
Right. And we talk about, you know, those non-album singles. I mean, we had just had Hi 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 a few months earlier, or December of 72, right?
Mm.
You know, years later, now we discovered that he had a treasure trove of songs that maybe he could have plucked, well, like a you know, a Best Friend, or, you know, I wouldn't say 1882, but I mean, he has so many other songs, you know, Mama's Little Girl, you know, I Lie Around, which came out later, you know, Country Dreamer, which came out, you know, we end up getting later, but all these songs that, you know, that we're just, you know, we discovered later on. But you know, who knows if he would have picked one of those as a single during the Red Rose Speedway months, leading up to Live and Let Die. You know,
we just did a show on Things We Said Today with Denny Sywell, which just came out for the 50th anniversary of the album, and I brought up that very same thing. 1972 was such an unusual year because Wings put out 3 standalone singles and no albums, so which is like unheard of. And they could have just as easily, and don't get me wrong, Hi 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 is a great rocker. Believe me, I'm very happy that Hi 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 was made a single, but they could have released other songs that made Red Rose Speedway, you know, or didn't make Red Rose Speedway. They did have 2 albums worth of material. They could have released something at the end of 72 that wasn't Hi Hi Hi. How did they make that decision? Well, ultimately it was Paul that made the decision, But I think in the case of Hi Hi Hi, he made the right decision.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
Cool. Kit, do you see a second single on the album?
Yeah, I mean, I probably agree with Ken that Big Barn Bed it definitely has an instant appeal. Second choice would probably be Get on the Right Thing. I think those two have the most potential commercial appeal. The rest of it, I mean, Loop, I don't think so.
Why not? Come on. Come on.
That's a little experimental, I would say. But I mean, My Love was definitely the obvious, the most obvious choice and the correct choice. But I think that's an interesting thought, Ken, and maybe it's true that Paul wanted this to be considered as sort of a full work. I mean, certainly in the second side with that medley. I
Mhm.
mean, that's pretty obvious that he didn't want to split that up. So maybe he felt, and plus as you were saying, Tom, I mean, with Live and Let Die coming up, and he released a bunch of singles the year before, maybe he didn't want to risk overexposure. So maybe the one single he felt was enough from this album. So so maybe that was the correct choice to just have My Love and leave it there. But it seems kind of unthinkable today, because usually albums have like 3 or 4 singles, and so Thriller had like
Right.
7.
7.
So we tend to like,
It's a good point, Kit, because you look at all these early 70s albums from the Four, and how
Mhm.
many of them only had one single from them.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
You think about it, it's
Yeah, and that's like kind of unthinkable.
Right.
In later years, I mean, you'd have at least 3
Right.
from an album. So to have one, it's kind of hard to imagine. But yeah, I think that's true. That was pretty typical. I mean, say Imagine. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
Imagine. Yeah, it had one single. I mean, you would think there were, there could have been a couple of other singles there.
You
So
live
in a
in the
way,
material world. Only had
Yeah.
Give Me Love.
yeah.
You know.
So
Mind games.
It
So-
wasn't until the late 73, because Band on the Run in America had 3 singles, and the Ringo album had 3 singles.
right.
Prior to that, we weren't used to having 3 singles off an album. You'd be lucky if you had 2.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Joe,
that wasn't so unusual.
Yeah. Joe, do you think there's a second single on this album?
Nope. And that's probably why there wasn't a second single. Never think of that. But the closest one I think is Big Barn Bed. I'll agree with that. It's poppy, catchy,
Right.
fun. That I love that song. I gotta say, before I
Yeah.
go into this album later, I gotta
Yeah.
say what I love. I love My Love. I love Big Barn Bed. 1-2 punch for me, those two.
Yeah.
I just wished for me that the album didn't descend into mediocrity after that. But with those 2 songs, yeah, absolutely. I think Big Barn Bed could make a single if you're going to have anything. But even there, I'm not 100% sure. I think Country Dreamer, out of all the related songs, even though that was eventually used as a B-side, that
Right.
might have been a single,
That's a fun
catchy
song.
little single. But no, I don't see a real single here. Yeah, the other ones, even the best ones here, are a little, maybe arguably a little long, maybe, or awkwardly structured for a quick single. Don't know.
All right. Well, let's get to the other track that's kind of, you either love it or you hate it, and that's what ends the album, and that's the medley. Kit, talk about the medley, because Paul, during Memory Almost Full, he forgot about the medley here, unfortunately. but again, it's what, 4 tracks. And do you think they gel the way they should, or what are your feelings on the medley? Because I know some people love it, and some people are not fans of it.
Yeah, I think it's okay. It has very mixed results for me. I liked, two of the songs more than the other. I like Hands of Love. I think that may be my favorite. In fact, I wish he had fleshed it out more. Into an entire song. I think that it has some charm to it, but obviously it would need more lyrics to make it a full song. And Power Cut, I think has some, is catchy as well, has some nice harmonies from Linda and Paul. I think that could have been an interesting, full song as well. I think, I like the guitar solo in that from Henry, but Hold Me Tight and Lazy Dynamite, those two just don't work as well for me. I think they're kind of repetitive. They just don't really go anywhere. And so those two kind of ruined the medley for me. And so, I think the other two I mentioned, Power Cut and Hands of Love, I think if he could have fleshed those two out into full songs, that maybe forget the medley and just have those two. So yeah, the medley just didn't really work for me. I just thought it was very uneven.
Okay. Joe?
And Loop is not considered part of the medley, right?
No.
All right, so while Hold Me Tight, I like the feel of it at first. It does get repetitious, I think. After a while, it also starts to turn into a little song and dance show. Show tune. Hold me tight. Just give me a break.
That's part of who Paul is.
Yeah, I was waiting for that, but there's other times when I like it. I don't like it here.
Okay.
And Lazy Dynamite, is that just, you see, feel like Paul thought, oh, it's a good title, Lazy Dynamite. What can I do about it? What can I do with it? Lazy Dynamite, Lazy Dynamite, Lazy. Come on. It sounds good. Make a song. You know what I mean? I don't really, although I love Check My Machine. Yeah. Check My Machine. It works sometimes. That's supposed to be a crazy experimental track.
Like you said, anyway, contradiction here.
Right.
But at least I'm honest with other people, either like everything or they hate everything. I don't know. It's some in between. But anyway, I think it's a pretty weak medley overall. Hands of Love. I listened to this album. I want to get a lot of these points in today again. I dislike it as much, if not more, than I did when I first heard it as a teenager. I just every now and then I put this on. It hasn't grown. And when I listened to the medley, especially when Hands of Love came on, and I started to think at that point, like, this whole album is full, like, When I Saw You Last Night, Hold Me Tight, Lazy Dynamite, la 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 la, whoa 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 whoa, which I gave a free pass to. Whoa whoa.
I was gonna say, yay! Don't diss the whoa whoa whoa.
And this we got ba 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 ba. You know what it always reminds me
of?
Yeah,
the ba 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 ba. That was bad. I agree with that.
Before I forget about this, I cut Paul out of slack. I still call him the greatest songwriter, in my view. But especially back then when he had the reputation for silly love songs, writing silly love songs and sugary, trite material and all that, I never really thought about it till today's listen. And I think that comes from here. This album, I think, is the epitome of what, for those who feel that way about Paul, who degrade him and insult his work, who think all it is silliness. That might have had a lot to do with this album, because that assessment came around this time. And I'm reminded of the Ruddles today when I'm listening to this, and that little joke when he's writing a song and he's going dee 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 on the piano. I'm thinking nowhere in Paul's career really that just hitting me today after all these decades does that come into real field in this album for me. It's just like, to me, it's I'm going through the whole album now. I'm not just going through the medley. But yeah, I don't really. It's not a good medley at all for me personally. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Ken?
We're on two different planets, Joe.
You're kidding. We are.
When you study Paul's entire body of work, he has certain strengths. He's got, like I said, the greatest gift of melody. He's one of the greatest vocalists of all time. He does great arrangements of his songs. Sometimes his lyrics may seem like they could be stronger, but I'm not that much of a lyrics person. You know, I mean,
Talked
if
about
if
that, yeah.
if lyrics are adequate and they fit the song and there's enough of a message in the song and it works, I'm happy with it. I think that when he does these medleys, it's beyond brilliant. I do not feel like this is a very repetitious medley with the songs. I think that each song is just the right length. It doesn't go on too long for me. As soon as you're into it, then you're into the next song. And the vocals, I mean, I just said he's one of the greatest singers of all time. Listen to the way he ends Hold Me Tight with that high note at the end. Hold me tight, that really long note. It's amazing. And at the very end, when you've got all 4 songs being played at the same time, you know, segging into each other, it's so absolutely brilliant. You know, I really think that this is masterful. And I wish he did more medleys, you know. I love it. You know, I have no problem whatsoever.
Hmm.
I think you know, it's a work of art when you can do something like that.
Okay.
Can I add something, because I have a note here and it fits in now, I think, pretty much with this. You know, we've talked about this before I did the show. I was thinking, I agree. For me, if a song is about the music, probably first, because you can have music without lyrics. And I think the best thing, so if the lyrics can come together with great music, a great melody, that's even more special, right? If it works sometimes, but you can have a music without words. But I was thinking again, and today, the first time, you know, in preparation for the show, probably the Paul's best 5 songs, and that's hard to say because he's got so many hundreds of songs, right? Let It Be, Maybe I'm Amazed, Hey Jude, Eleanor Rigby, and Yesterday. All of those songs have more depth. Great tunesmith and melody master, and the best that ever lived in my book that he is. Still, those 5 songs, I just thought those all have a little more substance, heart, feel, or about something, you know, deeper. And if I'm in the mood to hear a Check My Machine, I can listen, you know, I can listen to it, or Nothing for Free, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know why it doesn't work for me. I'm trying to, you know, you can't always explain these things. This particular album, they don't work for me. They seem like really just kind of like lazy and struggling to come up with his identity, which he would do later on Band on the Run. He'd come into his own finally, but
Yeah.
he's trying to work at it, and that's how I get the feel of the album, of this album.
Well, this medley for me, and I'm trying to find who said it. I'm scrolling in the comments and I can't find it now, so I apologize, whoever said this. I can't find who said it now, but I think for me, the medley, the person who said this, I agree. It sounds forced. And I think for me, that's a fairly, I mean, that's how it came off to me. I think that's a pretty good way of putting it, that it just, you know, he's trying to make these, you know, these pieces work together, and just some work better than others. Let's put, for me, that
Right.
it does. So I thought that was a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
It does sound kind of forced.
I
To me.
think you have to remember too that not only was he trying to find his identity, but he was also trying to find an identity for the band. And that we don't really realize that how different that this record really could have been, which we'll talk about a little in a little bit. But this album was the result of not being not having it as he originally intended it to be. So I think we got to take that under consideration as well. When in regards to the medley, the Hold Me Tight, I think that probably goes on for like 30 seconds, a little too long. I think the Hold Me Tights is just, I think this medley could probably be a minute shorter without all the repetition in it. But I agree with you, Kit, though. The Hands of Love, I think, is the standout of the 4 for me, because it feels like more like a song in a way, to where it's just not, you know, a repetitive type of thing with Hold Me Tight. But Ken, I think you were getting ready to say something too. If you want to, go ahead.
Just, I think we all have different sets of ears here and different opinions. And I don't think that this medley sounds forced. You know, because all 4 songs were written separately. I don't think Paul had any idea that they would be in this order, but I think that they flow together extremely well. Now, on the other hand, what Paul did at the end of Egypt Station with something like Hunt You Down going into
Right.
Naked, that did not flow well. That was very abrupt there. And I felt like that didn't work as a medley. I love the songs, but I just don't
Yeah.
think that, when you combine the 3 songs there, it didn't work as well, at least those 2 songs together.
Yeah.
But these 4 songs, I think, really flow.
I'll give you that, and I'll also say that I mean the medley, the supposed medley at the end of Memory Almost Full, just doesn't work for me as maybe as well as, because you can say about flowing into another song. I mean, look how masterfully those songs flow together on Abbey Road, right? On those
Right.
medleys.
Uh-huh.
When we think medley, I mean that's what we think. I mean, how these songs flow together so well that if we hear it and we don't think it does, then we just go ahead and just say, oh, this is crap. It's nowhere near as good as the past stuff that he's done medley wise. But we don't think, well, okay, maybe there is some value in, you might not like it as a whole, but individually there is some stuff that you can really enjoy. Like, I mean, like Hands of or damn it, the what's it called again? The Hands of Love, was that what it was
Hands
called?
of Love.
Yeah, Hands of Love. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I think that's one of the better songs on the album. It just happens to be part of a larger chunk of music that I don't necessarily think is as good as other stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I think people sometimes get caught up in comparing everything to the Beatles.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
And we all have our own opinions and everything. To me, what really matters is this worthwhile to listen to? Not necessarily, because if you compare everything to the Beatles, you're gonna come up short with a lot of other artists.
Yeah.
So, to me, this is so worthwhile listening to.
Okay, cool. Joe, let's start with you on this.
Uh-oh. What's
just-
the topic? What's the topic?
I want to see what other people love or dislike about this album. So let's talk about favorites, not so much Joe's. Let's start with you. I mean, are there any other standouts to you on this album, or is just Big Barn Band and My Love that it? I mean, let's
Well, like I said, I think Big Barn Band and My Love for me are not, knock it to a 1-2 punch, and then to me it just goes down. When I listen to it today and Get on the Right Thing came on, and every time I hear that, I love the beginning. There's something about the beginning, the way it kind of creeps in there and tantalizes you a little bit, the way it's going to start. And by the way, instrumentation is fantastic on the record. I have nothing against any of the musicians. I think it's well played. There's great work on musicians on this. But I don't know. This time I just thought I don't know. I thought Get on the Right Thing kind of like goes off and kind of like you don't know if it's going to end or different kind of feels how if it should end or maybe it didn't. I don't know. It overstays its welcome a little bit to me. You know what I mean? So that's how I feel about that as far as not really liking that one. But as far as look at my list here. One More Kiss. I like One More Kiss as far as a nice little ditty that Paul does so well with a good melody and catchy and all that, of course, but it's not really that much of anything, but it's enjoyable, when you're listening to the album. Single Pigeon, that sounds unfinished to me. Sounds like a forgotten piano demo or something like that. And again, then I say, I know sometimes, not that there's anything wrong with that. Other times you really you feel like, well, it's okay, so that's good. I don't know why. In this the context of this, listening to this record, it strikes me as, being a kind of throwaway. When the Night. It's okay, but I consider it almost like a rewrite in Places of Tomorrow in a way that the part about like when he sings "Bring a Bag of Bread and Cheese," that whole part sounds a little bit like in When the Night. It sounds like it's a repeat of it to me. It's okay, And Little Lamb Dragonfly. I didn't know who was going to bring this up first. I'm going to be the guy that's going to get hanged for this, okay? Because I only know 2 other people that have told me they don't like Little Lamb Dragonfly. I know everybody loves it. It's considered fantastic. One of Paul's maybe best of all. I just think as such, for me, it's his most overrated song, if that's the case. I don't know. Maybe it shines brighter for people on here because the rest is kind of mediocre by the numbers and undeveloped. I don't know. I'm saying a lot there. get those tomatoes ready. I don't know what to say. I'm looking at I like Loop. I like Loop a lot. Because it's it's experimental. It's different. It's challenging. It sounds like something a little unusual that holds my interest. But overall, I got to go with the idea, as I said, that I just think this is Paul at his weakest. I think he's capable of a lot better than this, Beatles and non-Beatles. Just recently, if I go on a tangent for a moment, I was listening to All Things Must Pass again in the car. The whole thing. We had a long drive. I heard the whole thing. And the 50th anniversary, which I really love. I really love what they did with that, you know. And again, I'm thinking, these are obvious things you would think you would have thought of all these decades. So, George, again, a lot of personal stuff, a lot of spiritual stuff, a lot of depth to his songs. John, as we know with John. And Paul doesn't always have to do that. I'm okay with Junior's Farm. That's one of my favorite songs of his. It's just complete lunacy and throwing ideas around, It doesn't have to always be Eleanor Rigby, But I just was starting to be reminded of this today, listening to this album. I just felt like this very well could be on the bottom for me, which we'll get into later. I didn't think that going into this. It's been a while. But did I cover it all? I think I covered it all. Yeah.
All right, Ken, you've been making some interesting faces there while listening to.
I don't know what you mean, Tom.
a lot of restraint. I know. God bless you. A lot of restraint. I know. Probably.
Ken, set Joe straight.
That's why you let me go first.
No, I've said many times, Little Lamb Dragonfly is one of the greatest songs ever in Paul McCartney's entire catalog. It is absolutely gorgeous in its melody. And, you could even call it a medley because it does feel like there's all these different sections. I hate to sound repetitive, but it flows like a great McCartney song does, like a Band on the Run, like an Uncle Albert Admiral Halsey. It's so gorgeous in the melody and the guitar playing. It's so beautiful in its melody and the way Paul sings it. And, I'm just stunned when I listen to something like that. I really do think it's definitely of the best of his of all time. I only wish that he had done that song live. Imagine that in the 76 tour on the acoustic set. Oh, right. Man, I would have been melting, if he did a song like that.
He sings it very well, if I may. He sings it very well, Little Lamb Dragonfly.
Yeah, it's very heartfelt. The entire album, I always liked. The only song I ever had a problem with, well, actually early on, I struggled with a lot of Paul's experimental, wacky stuff. So I didn't get Loop when it first came out, just like I didn't get Cream Crawley, and now I wish he did a lot more of that stuff. Loop, as we discovered talking to Denny Sywell, was just created like on the spot in the studio.
Right.
And I love when Paul does stuff like this. The Fireman stuff is like that. Coming into the studio and not having any idea, just creating something out of thin air, kind of. And I love all the sounds on Loop. But really, the only song I ever had a problem with in the very beginning was Single Pigeon, because it did seem like, not that much of an effort was put behind it. Maybe it did sound, like Joe said, like a demo, whereas now I like the song a lot more. But the entire album as a whole has some of his greatest melodies, excellent singing. All of side one is masterful to me. Big Barn Bed is a great opening number. It could have easily have been a single. There's so many songs that Paul could have released as singles in the 70s off his albums that he didn't. And, it's catchy as hell, Big Barn Bed. I love the lead guitar work from Henry McCullough on there. It's just so perfect. That's one of the great things for me about studying Wings. As much as I would like to see each lineup keep the same,
right,
without the fourth and fifth members leaving, there's a huge difference if you really listen to the guitar playing of Henry, along with Jimmy McCulloch, and then Lawrence Juber. You can tell they're different styles.
Yeah.
Big Barn Bed works because, part of what Henry plays in his lead guitar work there. It's so right for a blues guitarist to play what he did. I love the guitar playing on Get on the Right Thing, though that was David Spinoza, because Get on the Right Thing and Little Lamb Dragonfly originated from the Ram sessions.
Right.
So they just did some touching up on those two songs to put it on Red Rose Speedway. Only One More Kiss is very much in that same vein as Country Dreamer, these great acoustic songs that Paul does so well. And, Only One More Kiss is, in the same vein as I Will, all these songs that sound so simple, beautiful melody, off the cuff. He comes up with these things that sound like he could have written it, in 5 minutes, but they work for him. Get on the Right Thing is, I love that song to death. It's funky as hell. I love the drumming from Denny Sywell on there. Listen to the fills that he does on both Get on the Right Thing and Big Barn Bed. He helps to really make that song and the entire arrangement of it. Everything, especially side one, is so great. And then now I really appreciate Loop more than I ever have before. When the Night is very different. I don't know what time signature Paul is using in the song, but it's very different from most typical songs there. And again, Denny Sywell accentuates the song a lot with his drumming, which he's very proud of with that particular song. It's got, a melody that's kind of quirky and different, but again, it works, in the McCartney vein. And, all these songs stick out in your head except for Loop. And now I like Single Pigeon more. So overall, I consider this, I think Paul has made, in my mind, 10 albums that I would truly consider to be great. And up until recently, I called this a near great album, and now I'm calling it great. Just as the single album, not even counting the double album.
Right. Well, we'll talk about a double album here in a few minutes. But Kit, notable tracks you're not very fond of still to this day, or any growers for you on this album?
Yeah, there are a few growers. I'll say, first 3 tracks are I think, like, just a 1, 2, 3 punch. I mean, as you said, Ken, Big Barn Bed, great opener. I mean, just a great rocker, really get you going. And then, of course, My Love, as we've talked about, one of his best. Big fan of Get on the Right Thing. I mean, that is just, as you said, Ken, funky. And I'm glad you mentioned Denny Sywell's drumming on that. You hear just some great fills that he's doing. I mean, he is so good. I mean, such a, one of my favorite Wings drummers, hands down. Okay, folks, get out the first I'll mention One More Kiss. I'm kind of iffy on this song. I mean, I like the country tone to it, but it's just never done a lot for me. I don't know. It's okay. It's just never really set me on fire. I mean, it's just a little maybe repetitive lyrically. I don't know. It's just okay for me. Okay, Little Lamb Dragonfly. Okay, folks, get out the tomatoes.
Whoa, that's no for the 3 people I know now.
Okay, I don't hate it. I really don't.
I hate it.
I've just never quite understood the magic that everybody talks about with this song. I will have to agree with you, Joe. I've always felt this is a little overrated too. It's not. I don't hate it, as I said.
Little Lamb.
It goes on a little too long. I think it's over 6 minutes, and that's long. And but not just that. I don't know. I just think he's done a lot better than this. I mean, it's okay. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty. He sings it very well, as we've talked about. His voice is lovely. I like. You can really hear Linda's harmonies on this. And by the way, I'll say that on many of these tracks, by the way, the album tracks, really does some nice harmonies on this album. Really comes through. you know, and but I don't know what it is. I've just never found this to be that outstanding. I don't know.
I can't
mean,
put my finger on it either, kid.
yeah.
Exactly. I just know it's not all that to me, you know.
I mean,
It's not
exactly.
horrible.
I mean, yeah, it's not terrible. I mean, I just think, you know, I could name a lot of other songs that I think are a lot better than this. So I'm in your corner on this one, Joe. I know we're in the minority. We're in the minority. I get
That's
it.
all right. We're
You don't
wrong.
think it's a beautiful melody
Yep.
Mm.
It's
throughout the
it's
whole
okay.
song?
It's okay. I don't know. I just don't know what it is. I've never connected with this song. I don't know. So, you know, so I'm with you on this, Joe. I just you know, so go ahead, throw the tomatoes at us.
As
You know,
Ringo would say.
yes, as
Tomatoes at
Ringo
me.
would say.
Kid,
Single.
I'm surprised. I really thought you were on the right thing, but I guess you're not.
Ah, I'm just a single pigeon on this. I know
Yeah,
that.
Let's not make it one to remember.
Yeah. And speaking of single pigeon, yeah, I'm not a fan of single pigeon. I just kind of like what you said, Joe. It sounds like, yeah, just sort of half finished. I've just never When the Night, this was a grower. And kind of what you said, Ken. You know, it's very unusual. As you said in the time signature, love the you know, the call and response, great guitar solo from Henry McCullough. It's hard to define it. You know, sounds a little bit like Blue Moon of Kentucky in terms of chord changes, but it's a little tropical at times. You know, it sounds a little bit like Sea Moon. Is it country? Is it trop? I mean, it's really hard to define.
Uh-huh.
But that's what makes it good. You know, that it is so unusual.
Right.
So this has been the grower for me. Loop, I'm still kind of undecided about Loop because it is so weird.
Uh-huh.
And I do love Weird Paul, don't get me wrong. I've talked about how I like the weird side of Paul, but this one, I don't know. It's another one that goes on a little too long for me. You know, when reading the McCartney, oh my God,
Legacy?
I'm blanking out. But thank you, Legacy, the McCartney Legacy. And they talked about how pretty high they were when they were recording that and working on it. And I thought, that explains it. But it's an interesting experiment.
That was just one you know, segment of the sessions. I mean, as we know,
Yeah,
there's different, you know, parts, but I get where you're coming from. But
yeah. So
I don't think
yeah.
you can really use that as I mean, that might be why Glenn Johns left, but I don't know necessarily buy into it that's, you know, why the album maybe doesn't hold up to some people's eyes. Or
exactly.
I should say.
Yeah. So I don't know. So I'm kind of iffy on that. So there are some, you know, moments on here that I like, but it's still pretty uneven for me. But there are some tracks, as I said, first side, but those three that go right into each other, really strong.
Okay.
All right. Well,
how about you, Tom?
This is the tale of two albums for me. I think the A side is one of Paul's absolute best. I think this is one of the great A sides in his entire discography, and I love every single track. I'm on board for every single track. It sounded. I listened to the Half Speed Master today, and it sounded fantastic. The vocals really come through. This great separation. You really hear every instrument on this Half Speed Master. But yeah, the 1, 2, 3 punch, Big Barn Bed, My Love, and Get on the Right Thing, I think are killer. It's just like that the Wings Over America opener, right? Of Venus and Mars rock show, and then into Chet. I mean, yeah.
Good call.
This is kind of a killer. You know, One More Kiss, I adore. I love it more lyrically than I do musically, but I love it musically as well. But yeah, Little Lamb Dragonfly, I think is a masterpiece. I love how the two connect. I love how it goes into you know, the Lamb segment, or Little Lamb Dragonfly segment, and it really works as to me, because I consider it kind of a medley. I mean, it really is kind of in a way two different songs. and it works as two different songs here for me. But then when you flip it over, that's when I start kind of having some issues. I mean, we talked about Single Pigeon a little bit. I mean, it's fine, but it doesn't hold a candle to the songs on side one or A. When the Night is Fun, I have no problem with that. Loop, listening to Loop, I told you guys earlier earlier today on this Half Speed Master, I found new respect for just for hearing. You can hear everything a lot more clearer on it, and you can really appreciate what he was trying to do. Again, like I love it when he does little things like that, experimental things like 222, right?
Yeah.
From Memory Was Full. You
Love
think
it.
about Rinse the Raindrops, which Ken, you were talking about how he just goes in and then just creates stuff into the studio.
Right.
That was created in the studio. Kind of like Really Love You was created in the studio as well. But the medley for me just doesn't sit well with me. So again, side A I think is a masterpiece. The flip side, which we can talk about now because we have all of these songs that we learned about a couple years ago on the Red Rose Speedway box set, and we're going to get into now the potential of a double album. We know that EMI, after reading the McCartney Legacy book, did not want a double album. They had so much stuff. You got the Red and the Blue coming out. You had the George Harrison, Living in the Material World coming out. Is that they were thinking of that as well. So bring it down to a single album. Not only did they want a single album, but they also just wanted Paul vocals. So there goes, other great tracks. I think Seaside Woman is one of the best things Linda ever wrote and sang. I think that's kind of missing. I also kind of believe that, if Paul really wanted to, because, listen, I'll give you all Paul on side A, right? Flip it over, then let's really see what the band can do. Let's put on a Seaside Woman, or let's put on like an I Lie Around, or I Would Only Smile, or something to showcase, Henry a little bit more. With one of the live albums like Best Friend or The Mess, So I really think if he would have thought it, I kind of feel like they would have said, okay, you can have side A, do side A for us, and then do side B for Wings. And the fact that they also had to call themselves Paul McCartney and Wings too, I think was kind of a little bit of a slap in the face to a Beatle, one of the most successful artists of all time, especially even at that time. You can consider Paul one of the greatest musicians of all time at that point in time. But Ken, you got the Red Rose Speedway box set. You see all these songs, all the possibilities. The double album, the proposed double album, was released at the same time with this. Also, the CD is on the box set. Talk to me in about these tracks that weren't used. Like Mama's Little Girl, Tragedy. Night Out, Jazz Street. 1882. What do you think about these? They work better as a double album.
Well, it's kind of different when you've grown up with it as a single album. And I was very used to it as a single album and liked it just as it was. And when you later on learned of the track listing, because there were two proposed track listings. Right. And I knew most of the other songs anyway, because they were either B-sides or they were on cold cuts at the time. So I could hear all that in my head. But then when you actually play it, when it was released, you really get the feeling that this was more of a band when you do that. I do regret that decision wasn't made, and Paul just acquiesced, with the record company. And but another point to be made here is I'm sure that the band was a bit frustrated that this wasn't a double album, but I don't think that would have changed the outcome of what happened with the first lineup, because Henry would have left anyway. He was still having problems with Paul. And the main reason, well, there are two reasons why Danny Sywell left, and that's because he wanted Paul to wait until he got another guitarist before going to Lagos, and he wouldn't do that. He had an itching to make the album for Band on the Run. And then there were the money problems, because they weren't paid very well.
Oh,
and
I'm sorry, Ken, but that's partly Denny Lane and Henry's fault. I mean, they were already contracted with other labels, you know. So I mean, that has to be recognized as well.
I know, but I'm just saying that I think that the same thing would have happened. I still think that Henry would have left anyway, even if the double album came out. They would have been pleased. They would have been presented more as a band. But and I wish that it did come out as a double album. I do think that it really showcases the other members. Like you even have Seaside Woman for Linda for her lead vocal. And you know, well, I'm also thinking about the live album from '72 that came out too, because she had I Am Your Singer on there.
Right.
So you had Paul and Linda sharing lead vocals, and you had I Would Only Smile from Denny Lane. So, and then you had the songs like I Lie Around, which even though it was written by Paul, Denny Lane sang the verses and Paul sang the chorus. Well, actually, Paul sang the last verse, I think. But still, you would have heard the others much more, and it would have felt more like, you know, it was truly a band album. But I like all the songs that made it there. I mean, I loved all these songs when they came out as B-sides. Country Dreamer, I think, is, you know, a perfect B-side, and it's Country Dreamer is just like Only One More Kiss to me. It's another song just like that. I loved I Lie Around a lot, especially when Paul is belting his vocals there in the song. Night Out is an interesting song only in the sense that I got used to Night Out when it was first on Cold Cuts, and by then it was already, they developed verses for the song, whereas the version that came out on the Red Rose Speedway box set, when it was first done, only had the chorus. It wasn't a fully developed song. It's a good rocker, but you know, more work had to be done for it. I love I Would Only Smile. Very strong song from Denny Lane. I have always loved Tragedy. I thought that was a great cover right there, and a very unique arrangement because Paul's playing the sitar on there. You know, that is a sitar that you hear on the song, and you know, that one of those gentle ballads with a great soft delivery from Paul. Mama's Little Girl. Again, all these acoustic songs, they're all in the same camp to me. Mama's Little Girl, Only One More Kiss, you know, Country Dreamer, Part of the Country, you know, they're all in the same vein to me. And they all work. If you like one song, chances are you'll like the other. Best Friend is a pretty simple rocker. I don't think it's nearly as strong as Hi 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 as a rocker, but I liked it. And again, it would have given the album more of an edge, like you said, Tom. I'm just looking at everything here on the double album. If there's anything that I'm missing? No, I think well, you add the Mess too. The Mess and Best Friend definitely would have added a lot more of a rock edge to the album. So yeah, I do wish overall that it came out as a double album. And maybe the public would have appreciated Wings more as a band and recognized more of the contributions of the others. But I don't think it would have changed what happened with Ben on the Run and Henry leaving, and then Denny Sywell leaving.
Okay, very good. Joe, did you get familiar with when this box set came out with, I mean, obviously we knew I Lie Around, we knew The Mess, Country Dreamer. When this box set came out, I mean, were you aware of, say, something like Tragedy or 1882? How familiar were you with some of these tracks?
Well, the box set, the deluxe box set was like the last one I got. Like I didn't get it when it first came out, and I don't think I've played the tracks from the box set, but my friend Jeremy from the fest did get me the vinyl the Red Rose Speedway extended album. Now, I only played that. I played that right away, and I played it, and I remember thinking, I think I like this effect better than the single album when I first heard it. But in fairness, even though I remember liking it better, I don't remember all the songs. So today, in preparation for this, I did a search and I listened to some of them. And I would say I Would Only Smile. I think that Denny Lane actually would have improved this album, you know. And I say that way, nothing against Denny Lane, but I mean, I wouldn't say that for all the other Paul albums necessarily, you know. But this one, I think that would have improved it. I like Seaside Woman. I've always enjoyed that, to have Linda doing Seaside Woman. Although I'm not a big fan of The Mess, I still think it would have been a bit of a, more, like I said, edgy addition to the album. Country Dreamer, I said how much I enjoy that. I already enjoy it as a B-side. I would have liked it on the album. And then Tragedy, I like the Bee Gees Tragedy better. I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm not, but again, some songs you do like instantly, and some songs you need more time. And some songs, like, again, back to what I was saying, this album just never grew on me. Although, if I could backtrack a little, you were talking about, okay, were you saying that When the Night was the grower?
Yeah.
If there is a grower with potential for me, it would be that, I think, that one. But anyway, yeah, some are growers, some are not. And from what I can recall, some of the other ones they didn't really knock me out, the other ones, Paul songs and stuff, I dare say. The Rockers are 1882.
Yeah.
Was good. That's about all I could say. I only played the 2-record set once. Thought it was a better experience. I think this album could benefit from being a little more of a group effort. And before I forget to say this again, I want to make it clear how much I love Big Barn Bed, and that includes the driving backbeat. I don't want, if you're listening, Danny, Danny Sywell, I love your drumming. I like Wildlife better than I do Red Rose Speedway. Just, so you know that. Anyway, I want to say that because you hear people say things, some of your colleagues, and you're like, oh, I want to make a point of that too, saying that too. I do like, as I said earlier, I like the musicianship. It's mostly the songs themselves are my favorite songs.
Okay. All right. Kit, does this album work better for you as a double album? Or were there some albums or some tracks that were on the proposed double album that you think would have gone better on what and eventually became, or what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. I think there are some tracks that were supposed to be on the double album that, either this should have been made a double album or maybe even swap some out. Night Out. I love Night Out. That's a great rocker. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Rock Show. That it could have also been a great album opener. Instead of Big Barn Bed, although Big Barn Bed is such a great one too. But I think maybe some lyrics could have been added to flesh it out a little bit more. But otherwise, great jamming from the whole band. Again, Denny Sywell shines on this. Just a great song. I love Country Dreamer. I think it shouldn't have been relegated to a B-side. I think it's kind of part 2 of Heart of the Country. I love it. I'm sorry, I think this could have been swapped. One More Kiss could have been swapped out for this one. I've just always been a big fan of this song. Seaside Woman, I've always enjoyed that too. I think that could have gone on the album, and this has been a grower for me over time. And there's just such a charm about it, and you can't go wrong with reggae either. But but it's great lyrics. I just have always enjoyed it. I Lie Around. We've talked about this a little bit already, but great to have Denny Lane take the lead on much of it, and I just think it's it's a great showcase for him, and it would have been nice to have that. Best Friend, I don't know if I'm kind of torn about it because I like it. It's also a great rocker. It kind of has an Elvis sort of, it's Paul doing kind of his Elvis thing. I don't know, if it would have been an absolute necessity to include that on the album, but again, and particularly since it's a live recording, it just shows how they really gelled as a live band by that time, in 72. Mama's Little Girl, it's nothing revolutionary. It's not the lyrics aren't deep or anything like that, but it has that guitar picking, reminiscent of Blackbird or Mother Nature's Son. And I've always liked it. It's a, it's another kind of charmer. And I also I like Tragedy. No,
Yeah.
it's not the Bee Gees, but I do like their cover a lot. And
It's apples and oranges.
yes, exactly. It's apples and oranges, but no, it's a great cover. Not the Bee Gees, but
Yeah.
beautiful chord changes. Gorgeous harmonies. I mean, again, it just shows you how Wings really really great at this point. Really tight harmonies, and just sort of a haunting song. I think this should have made the final album for sure. So I remember when we first got that box set, and
Right.
and I heard a number, and some of these I had heard before, of course, but I just thought, why wasn't this on the final album? Why wasn't this on the final album? Get rid of
Right.
that medley, put this on the final album. I mean, I remember thinking that at the time. So yeah, I mean, I think if it had been a double album, it could have been a completely different
Right.
experience, because yeah, this was some great material.
Good point.
You ever
yeah.
notice that the version of Tragedy that's on the box set has a different lead vocal from Paul than what was on Cold Cuts? It is a different
Oh.
vocal.
Interesting.
Really?
I haven't listened to Cold Cuts in so long.
Yeah.
I'll have to go back and listen to that. No, I
Yeah.
haven't noticed that.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
And the like you said, Kit, the harmonies on Tragedy, it's such a full sound. Oh, yeah.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, I wish that Seaside Woman was on this record. I wish it was the first Linda lead vocal on a record. I think that would have given her maybe a little bit more credibility towards the fans that maybe thought that she wasn't worthy to be on on Paul's band, or Wings, if you will. But I really liked Seaside Woman, and it would have been, I think, a better song than, say, Cook of the House as a first lead vocal for Linda. So
Good
I mean,
point.
that for me, I think would have been, and then plus, it would have maybe shut Sir Lou Great up, because he had the lawsuit with Paul, because he couldn't believe that Linda could write a song. So that would have kind of take care of that situation. But let's end with our thoughts on our final thoughts on this album. After 50 years, I mean, do you think it still stands as one of Paul's great works? I mean, obviously we've had so many great albums come out after this that I mean, it's possible that sometimes that an album like this could get buried in between so many other great albums. But Kit, let's start with you. I mean, where do you see this album in Paul's discography, and does it hold up? I mean, to you?
I would say, excuse me, that it was. I would say it's in definitely the lower tier of his catalog. I mean, it's definitely not, what I would call among his best. However, I mean, it will always stand as the album with my love. I mean, kind of like what I thought when I first bought it and heard it. I mean, it has that great song on it, but I think it also, though, should be remembered, it's the beginning of this turning point in Paul's career, when Wings was really coming together as a full band, that a real band, and we're just this tight unit. And of course, as we know, Denny Sywell would soon leave, and oh my God,
And Henry.
Henry McCullough, thank you. Having a little brain fart there. Henry McCullough, would soon leave, and there'd be more changes to come. But I think, Paul was really starting to find his way in the band with the Wings concept at this point, and I think Red Rose Speedway was the beginning of that.
Okay, Joe.
Well, I think, like so many albums of Paul's these days, it's getting reappraised. Some people are liking it more than I've heard before. Same thing happened with McCartney 2 when that came out with the archives. It happened for Ram, certainly, and in that case, really deservedly so, and so on. But I think for those who still think this is Paul kind of like at his lower point in the earlier days, kind of a mixed album that people don't really love that much, general feeling in some critical circles. I still agree with that. I've tried this a lot of times, and every time I try it, this album never grows at all really on me. I don't think it's going to, although I did mention When the Night a little bit, but overall, no, it hasn't grown on me this. But even Press to Play albums I used to put in the bottom, still do, Driving Rain, those got a little better for me. And on that note, I want to say where I place it. Whenever I put the albums in their order of best to least for me, I'm talking about, again, not live albums, not albums of like covers or anything, just Paul's original material. I always put, in no particular order, I put Driving Rain near the bottom, Press to Play. Sorry, everybody. I know you guys love it. Pipes of Peace and Red Rose Speedway. Driving Rain, Press to Play, Pipes of Peace, Red Rose Speedway. Notice I don't have Wildlife in there, which is kind of interesting because a lot of people put that way near the bottom. I think I like, as I said earlier, Wildlife over Red Rose Speedway. I just like how it's kind of more primitive at that time. I don't know, something about it. I think I like some of the songs better, to tell you the truth. That's what it comes down to. I think Red Rose Speedway, for me, contains some of Paul's weakest material. I know Ken's last, so he'll
He's giving you the skunk eye right now.
he'll do that. I think it has some of Paul's weakest material, weakest songs of his career. And I'm thinking after this listen, I may never want to listen to this one again. I like to just put on, the first two, put on that great Big Barn Bed, put on that fantastic My Love, and then take the needle off, which I really rarely will do that. But this may be my dead last after today's listen, even under the albums that I mentioned, which for me is saying a lot. I think Driving Rain, what I used to pick on, I think has more potential for me. I'm starting to like the songs a little more on that when I listen.
Damn.
So that says a lot
Mhm.
for me. But finally, the thing is, none of those albums, like they don't have anything as great as My Love or Big Barn Bed on them anyway. You see, like that's what happens when you rank an album. Maybe you like two songs a lot, but the rest of it, no. Do you put that as higher than another album where you don't really like too many of the songs on there at all?
Interesting. Well, the one album that I'm really, really happy that's been getting reappraised favorably is Wildlife. I agree with you there. I think, after all said and done, I think it is a fantastic underrated album. But Ken, you talked about, you feel like this was like in that, if he's got 10 great albums, this is one of them. Right. So, I mean, where do you see this? I mean, for example, but where do you see this album now in Paul's catalog? And, and obviously, it's grown in stature in your opinion as well, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I appreciate this album more than when it first came out, and I liked it a lot when it first came out. And I think that the box set had a lot to do with that. But I think if he's made 10 great albums, and I know a lot of people will say that's way too many, but I do consider about 10 of his albums to be great. This would be probably towards the bottom of the 10.
Okay.
But yeah, it's like I said, when I listen to Paul, there's a lot of reasons why I want to listen to McCartney. I love him for his melodies. I love him for his variety. I love him for the bass playing. I love him for his voice. I love him for the arrangements of the songs. And yes, I do think he's a far better lyricist than people give him credit for. And I'm glad that he put out the lyrics book to explain some of his lyrics. But, I don't necessarily go to him for his lyrics. I don't always go to him for his depth. And there's a lot of songs in his solo career that do have depth. But if you love him for all the things that I just mentioned, how can you not love Red Rose Speedway? He's got great vocals throughout the whole thing. The arrangements of the songs are just right. The band is really cooking. I like what you said there, kid, about, this is Paul as he was really building the band, and you can tell they were getting better and better and tighter, and you can see that in the live performances too.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a shame that the fourth and fifth members had to leave,
Yeah.
right before Band on the Run. So, and I like when Paul mixes things up. He's so much known for being Mr. Mainstream, Mr. Pop. Well, part of him is that, but then he throws you loop. I love the fact that it's in there. If you talk about swapping songs, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would love to get rid of loop. No, I want to keep it for that reason, because it's out of character for what the general public thinks of him. So much of what Paul does that's very experimental, he either disguises it like the first two Fireman albums, or he'll make it a B-side or something that he buries on his CD singles. Even the extra material on McCartney 2 was weirder than what was on McCartney 2. Right. So, but to put it on the album like he did here with Loop or Crina Crori, I love that. Those are bold moves. I love when he does those kind of things. When he does a medley, which he's so masterful at doing, I love the fact that he did that again here. Like I said, Little Lamb Dragonfly, I would rate as among the best of his entire career. And really, I agree with you guys, well, some of you, that side one is perfect the way that it is. All 5 songs, and they all flow together well.
Right.
And like I said, I was very used to the single album when it came out, and I love the single album the way it is. If you want to showcase the band's talents, you put out the double album. But I do think that it's an outstanding album. We've seen this trend with early McCartney, Ram, Wildlife, and Red Rose Speedway, for it getting appraised higher now. And I think people love the more natural, pure, organic sounds that Paul had in the early years of his solo career and with Wings, instead of being very slickly produced. They love just the band. Right. And that's all captured on Red Rose Speedway and on Wildlife. Ram is a little bit more polished, but still, I understand why people feel that way right now, production-wise, that a lot of people favor that sound of McCartney's, the whole 70s sound. Yeah, so I really think that this album's grown in stature, and I'm really happy that it has. And I think more highly of it now than I did before.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Ken. Yeah, I mean, with me, with as strong as the A side is, that kind of goes, it brings it up to mid, right in the middle of the pack for me, just on the strength of that side alone. So it is an album that I do appreciate more over the time, and I play it more. I mean, this band, and I will call it a band. I mean, this is, I think, for me, if you're going to take all the different musicians that Paul had during this time, I think this one was, maybe the best or more organic in creating songs or writing songs than maybe the other parts of genres or not genres, sorry, but other iterations of the band. And I really, dig what the Denny's brought to the picture and what Henry, and it's a shame that, that he wasn't happy, with the fact that, he wasn't able to get paid. None of the members really, except for Paul, who was getting allowance from EMI, but his money was tied up. I think this should be known that his money was tied up because him suing the other 3, right? And then also Denny Lane and Henry, they had contracts from other labels, so they weren't able to, to sign a contract to get a fair share of pay. So, and then the fact that he's being asked to play this, that solo day in, every night, but again, that's Paul. And then, Denny Sidewell said it so perfectly on your show, Ken, things we said today. At the end of the day, it's still Paul McCartney that's writing those checks. But that's another story which we may revisit in the future. But guys, thank you very much for this show. Thank you for all your comments. let's wrap it up, and then let's talk about what we got going on in our other lives. Not just talk more talk. But Kit, you've been a busy woman.
Yes. Yeah, really. It's been crazy. On my other show, Toppermost the Poppermost, our latest episode just dropped a couple of days ago. We're looking at the charts for April 1963, where George Martin in the UK is building his empire. With, of course, the Beatles, but also Jerry and the Pacemakers and many other acts. And so, of course, in the US, we're not seeing the British invasion hit quite yet. Obviously, we're seeing a lot more, pop acts and so forth. We're just having a great time. Me, Ed Shen, and Martin Quibell exploring the charts. So please check out our latest episode. You can find us on Facebook, and I will post the link to our latest episode on Talk More Talk on our own Facebook page. And check us out. Please let us know what you think of these episodes. I also make an appearance on the latest When They Was Fab. We talk, not the entire episode, but Martin Quibell and I make an appearance, and we talk about all this craziness going on with AI and all of these insane, these songs that are popping up of young Paul singing his, newer songs and all this stuff. And so I give my opinion on what I think of these songs. Boy, do I give my opinion. Let's put it that way. So do check out the latest episode of When They Was Fab. So you can find that as well on Facebook and both of these shows on anywhere that fine podcasts can be found.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you, Queen. Joe, let's move on to you, my friend.
On my YouTube channel, known as Mean Mr. Mayo, I also have talked a little bit about the AI thing that's going on in one of my rant videos. If you want to check it out, so all these new songs, and quite literally new, because today I heard a version of Paul's song "New," sung as a Beatles song with John and Paul.
I heard that.
And I got to tell you, as much as I despise this and don't approve of it, that's one of the ones that I was intrigued by. I got to say, I said, "Oh no, don't tell me." Yeah, but check that video out. Overall, I'm worried where this is going to lead us.
Me too.
Also,
Yep.
well, I'm sure we all are worried about it. And then I did a show on the Two Legs podcast, Stuck Inside These Four Walls. I did it with, of course, Tom Hunyadi, Andy Nichols, and Beatley Tone of the Beatley Tone's Beatles channel. And it was live this time, where we got to take some rapid fire questions, and always had a good time doing that. That's over at the Two Legs channel. And on my channel, the last thing I'll tell you is that's a kind of new video. Is I was at the Chiller Theater convention I said earlier, and for music people, there wasn't much music going on there, but I did get to meet Melanie, which was really fabulous. She was so sweet and so wonderful. And of course, I bought that single, Brand New Key, when I was a child. That might be one of the very first 45s I ever remember buying, with going down to the record store to pick out on a piece of plastic. So check that video out of the Chiller Theater convention with Melanie.
Okay, Joe, what was the picture that she was with John Lennon? What was that event for? Was that the
that's where that's
one.
Yeah, the 1-to-1, but I never really picked up that
Oh,
she was
1-to-1?
there until I thought about the picture. And then
Okay,
at the end with China Na and everything, and they're all doing Give Peace a Chance. And ironically enough, it was a great picture where you basically see John as most of the picture at 8x10. And then Melanie's kind of sticking her head over his shoulder, singing a bit. And I couldn't bring myself to get that photo, pick that photo to get signed, because it was mostly John, really, I wanted a Melanie thing, so I had to sign it. I don't have it here with me. An record album, Melanie's LP cover. But
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, that was
All
a
right.
fun video. I saw that. That was great.
Yeah, well, I tried to make it a little fun as well as, yeah, because
Kind of
I
wish
had a
I'd
long
been
wait.
there
She
with
was on,
you guys.
well, it was a long wait for Melanie. She was on a break when I got there, but it
Mhm,
was well worth the wait.
mhm.
And before I hand it over to Ken, I just want to say a thank you to everybody that was at the fest that
Yes.
watched our panel, and in our our original member Ken Womack was there with us, and we just had a great time discussing and talking with everybody after that show, and we were all really busy at the time. So
Yeah, super busy.
it was pretty
Excuse
hectic.
me, I gotta say in the comments, Tim Allen reminds us, as he often does when he's on my live streams,
Yeah.
machines have been making music for years before AI came in. Tim, when do you last remember that every day there's 25 new solo Beatles songs or Beatles songs or vocals switched around? That's only today.
Yep.
All right.
But
Okay.
yes, thank you to everybody who came, and you can of course see the show that we did at Beatle Fest right on this channel. It's up the panel we did, so do check that out.
Okay, Ken, I know again you've been putting out a lot of content lately.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the great thing about going to the fest, especially these days, is you get to
Right.
see people in the flesh.
Yeah.
You know, as much as I love doing this, everyone that I talk to these days is on camera, on Zoom. So I know that a lot of people probably missed it last year because of COVID and trying to be careful. It's so nice to see people face to face. So
Yeah.
thanks to all of you who came to see our panel on 1973. Definitely the best year of the solo careers of the Beatles.
Absolutely.
And to prove that point, that was the year we got Tom.
Yes.
To cap it all off.
That's right.
Why is it even a debate?
Yeah.
Come on. Anyway, my show's here. Things we said today, as I said before, we also did a 50th anniversary salute to Red Rose Speedway and had Denny Sywell to join us. He's always a great guest. And if you ever want to learn about Wings, learn from the people who actually played with Paul in the band. That's the best way to really know what Wings was all about. You learn so much that way. On my YouTube channel, Ken Michaels Radio, been kind of busy. Brand new interview with Luca Perassi, who's the author of Paul McCartney Music is Ideas. And he covers the first 2 decades of Paul's solo career, the Wings period too. So this is the first of a 2-parter that I'm doing with Luca. This is just on the 70s. That's all we talked about in that video. Also, I interviewed Michael Ventrella, who's the author of The Beatles on the Charts. You know how much of a charts geek I am here on this show and on Things We Said Today. If you follow the Billboard charts, the singles and the albums, his book tells you everything you need to know, where the songs peaked, how many weeks it spent on the charts, the whole lifespan of the singles and albums, and where they rank overall in history between the group and the solo combined. And also, there's one other thing that people really like about a book like that one. And I remember when All Together Now came out, the first really great resource book for me on the Beatles. And they had the Billboard charts at the very end of the book, and they would list week by week where these songs were and where the albums were, and simultaneously the songs and albums together. Well, Michael does this from 1964 in the US all the way through the end of 2021.
Wow.
So
US chart.
yeah, just the Billboard charts in America. So yeah, if you're a charts geek, you will definitely like his book, and by all means check out the interview that I did with him. Another interview with Chris Englehart, who put out The Beatles Fully Uncovered, which is the ultimate book to get on side projects of the Beatles, what they wrote for the people, what they produced for other people, what they play on for other people. And also this morning, I did a brand new interview with David Jacks, who is the author of a brand new book on Peter Asher called Peter Asher, A Life in Music. Peter has led an amazing life. How can anybody, in fact, there's now a documentary that's going to be made on him, which he talked about in the interview. And a lot of the information is going to be based on interviews that David did that's in his book. So, you know, the Peter and Gordon period, of course, Paul writing the songs for Peter and Gordon, Paul living in the Asher household, Peter working for Apple, being the head of A&R, discovering James Taylor, helping James Taylor get a contract with Warner Brothers. All that stuff is in the book, and so many people that he's produced through the years. And of course, he's a DJ on Sirius XM on the Beatles channel. He's had such an amazing life, and he's still active as a producer. He just produced the new Susanna Hoffs album. So we talked for an hour and a half all about Peter's life and mixed that with all the Beatle connections, even talking about Time Takes Time, since
Wow.
Peter was one of 4 producers on that album. So that's all on Ken Michaels Radio on my YouTube channel. If you can, please subscribe to that. Every Little Thing, my radio show, heard on 50 radio stations. You can always listen to it on demand at WFDU's website, WFDU.FM. They keep 2 shows there that each run for 2 weeks. And my radio show covers pretty much group, solo, thematic sets, interviews, rarities, you name it. It's all mixed together in the 1-hour show. And then there's my website, kenmichaelsradio.com. Don't forget there's Beatles trivia every single week. And you can win so many of the books that I just mentioned. Chris Englehart's new book, the new one from Madeline Baccaro on Yoko Ono called In Your Mind, which just came out, by the way, as a hardcover version. Michael Ventrella's new book, The Beatles on the Charts, you can win. And since Denny Seiwell was on Things We Said Today, I had 1 copy left. Is it here? The last Denny Seiwell trio album, his jazz combo called Boomerang, which came out 5 years ago. It's got their version of Live and Let Die on there. And yeah, and I think that's everything for me. Oh, by the way, my YouTube channel, Ken Michaels Radio, we're doing another trivia show. That's tomorrow night. Andy Nichols is going to be on the show.
Oh boy.
Trying to redeem the Two Legs podcast.
Yes.
After Tom messed up big time on the first show. So now Andy's got to clean up for Tom. And Dylan Seavey is the champ at the moment. And Edward Crawford, who has his own YouTube channel, Call Me Mr. Broadstreet, he is the 3rd contestant. So there'll be another trivia show, which should be going up tomorrow night. My 5th.
When are my prizes coming in? I've been wanting to ask you that.
They're actually some of the prizes really are from Tom's collection that he won from me, which he agreed he was going to send over to you.
I mean, your Every Little Thing one is like 1 question, right? You got to answer right? Every time you do one. I've answered like 3, a bunch of them every show for 3 shows. I think I get a little prize here. But...
Nobody on the show wins any prizes yet. It's like I told you. Now that you're gone, now that I'll have prizes.
Yeah, well, don't do that. That was...
You had 3 weeks of bragging rights, so you did good, Joe. You did great.
Oh my God.
I survived.
Oh, before you go, Tom, I forgot to mention where you can reach us. You can reach us. I totally forgot. You can reach us on our website, talkmoretalk.com. You can email us at talkmoresolotalk@gmail.com. Of course, right here on this channel, don't forget to subscribe. And also you can find us on Facebook and you can find us on Twitter at talkmoretalk1, the number 1. Number 1, don't type out 1. I think that's everything. So sorry, go right ahead.
No, that's okay. That's okay. We want to get all the information out.
Yep.
While we're still here and breathing. So I'm going to try to go as quickly as possible with Two Legs. The last couple weeks, we visited our top 10 of Paul during the Beatles. A couple months ago, we did we did 62 to 66. 2 weeks ago, we did 67 to 70. So it was our top 10 favorite Paul-led vocals of those years. Last week we did another kind of top 10 because people just seem to love these damn ranking top 10 videos. But we talked about we did our top 10 favorite opening tracks on Paul's discography. And then this past weekend we just posted our interview like Ken did a couple days prior with Luca Prazzi on his new book, Music is Ideas. And like Joe said, we also did our third installment of Stuck Inside These Four Walls with myself, Andy, Joe, and Beadly Tone. I can't tell you how excited I am to tell you about May's slate, but I'm not going to do it right now.
Oh, way to build up the pressure of no, wow.
Really excited about the shows we have coming up for May over on Two Legs. So please head over to Two Legs YouTube channel and subscribe to that. Obviously, we're all over the audio podcasting formats as well. So check us out there. Email us at twolegspodcast@gmail.com. And that's going to do it. So thank you everybody for joining us again. This installment. We should be back in 2 weeks. Let's hope that everything goes smoothly. Let's hope that we come up with another idea, and obviously if you guys want to throw us an idea, which people have, and actually when we're done here, I'm going to talk about a couple more ideas that I got emailed about. So please email us or message us, whatever, with thoughts and ideas for shows. We love it. So keep them coming. So for the Queen, Kid O'Toole, Joe Mayo, Ken Michaels, I'm Tom Hunyadi saying, get on the right thing. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Get on the right thing, you.